Italian Renaissance, beginning about 1400 AD, was the foundation of the culture of Western man. Many of its names are familiar: Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael and Botticelli, Titian and Cellini. The Renaissance began with a boom in trade and finance. The names of those prominent merchants and financiers are not so well known, but their new riches made possible the genius of the artists and scientists. And the Renaissance created so much more than statues and paintings. Our system of international diplomacy was born then, our method of accounting, our method of scientific observation, our plan of educating the young. The Italian Renaissance only began in Italy. In the intervening 500 years, it has spread its ideals of culture and science throughout the world. This is the story of one man who, newly rich, donated something of his time and money to advance the movement of culture into Oklahoma. It is the story of a true Renaissance man. The house is a landmark in Oklahoma City. Surrounded by spacious lawns and formal landscaping, it stands somehow apart, even among the nearby houses in suburban Nichols Hills, an area noted for the distinction of its architecture. The big stone house bears little resemblance to those rambling ranch houses of this decade, which have now moved to the very edges of the estate. Thousands of Oklahomans have been invited within the grounds at one time or another over the years, but there are still thousands of others who drive by and casually consider whether the building might be an art gallery or library or some other public place. There have been enough of these over the years to require a private drive sign at the entrance. For those not familiar with Oklahoma's past, it is an understandable mistake. There is nothing to suggest what the place might be. There isn't much activity at the house now compared to the bustle of other years, and most of what goes on is shielded by the careful landscaping, the hedges and the trees. But from time to time, on warm, sunny days when the wind has calmed, it is possible to see a lone figure walking about the grounds. In these surroundings, one would expect him to be a man of some wealth and importance. But only a few of the new generation know of the many roles he has played in moving this state from frontier to industrial giant. His name is Frank Buttram, master of this place. He is one of that vanishing breed which made its way from tenant farm to mansion on a flood of Oklahoma oil. And now in the twilight of a long and eventful life, he can survey his own personal niche, carved in the wall of history. Frank Buttram was born in a log cabin in Indian Territory in 1886. Though the family owned little, they saved what they had. Living off a flock of chickens and a garden, they banked the money from the sale of cotton and bought stock in the American Telephone and Telegraph Company. Frank grew up a natural athlete with a special interest in baseball. The great Indian star, Jim Thorpe, took a personal interest in him and once loaned him his own baseball uniform. Frank went to Central State College, got a teaching certificate, and then in 1909 he enrolled at the University of Oklahoma to study chemistry and geology. He still played baseball, and when the Detroit Tigers came to town for an exhibition, Frank found himself pitching to Ty Cobb. When the game ended, Frank Buttram had struck out the immortal Cobb 3 times in a row, the only pitcher ever to do it. The Tigers offered the youngster a major league contract right on the spot, but Frank refused and returned to his studies. When Frank Buttram graduated from OU, the first big oil booms were just starting in Oklahoma. Working with the U.S. Geological Survey, he was assigned to make a survey of the Cushing oil field. His report, filed in Washington, turned out to be a first-class job of mapping the underground structure of the field and also suggested a pattern of future development which proved quite accurate. This report was one of the first applications of the science of geology to the oil business, which to that time had employed mostly luck or superstition to find oil. The oil companies were quick to recognize it. A group of Eastern financiers read the young geologist's report too and invited him to New York to learn more. While they debated investing in an Oklahoma oil, Buttram visited New York art galleries, and when the visit was over, the Easterners had put up $40,000 to drill for oil. Less than 4 years later, the company was sold for $6.5 million. At one point, a major oil company paid Buttram's company $1 million for a 480-acre lease near Yale. It had cost Buttram $400. After the sale of the first company, Buttram went exploring through Oklahoma and into Texas. He found a promising formation, bought a few leases, and drilled his first well. It started off producing 23,000 barrels a day, and 3 days later, he sold it for $1,600,000. Through the early 20s, Buttram Oil Properties set a series of records. He drilled 15 wells in 15 days and was soon producing 30,000 barrels a day, then 80,000. By the time he was 30 years old, the boy from the log cabin was a millionaire. With his financial position now assured, Frank Buttram turned to other interests. With his wife Merle and their 5 children, he embarked on a world cruise. It was an educational venture for the children, certainly, but it was also an education for Frank, for he frequently steered their way to parts of the world which would naturally be interesting to a successful geologist. Included in the tour was this area of geysers and hot springs, and any place where the hot water never ran out would have been interesting to a family with 5 youngsters. But the truth was that Frank Buttram had a professional interest in volcanoes and had once conducted a survey of volcanic sands in Oklahoma, a survey which later brought about the location of several glass-making plants in the state. Now, with time and money at hand, he visited almost all the major volcanoes and became an authority on the subject. The tour moved on to the ruins of ancient civilizations, to the crumbled rock and sand dunes surrounding the Sphinx, up and down the pyramids, and of course a rough and